When I was doing my presentation, I mentioned the fact that we treat everything that we collect at the Shoah Foundation as data, and not as products or platforms, and in fact, everything we do is, doesn't actually work, is not built for a particular platform or technology. That way, we can actually, and we do produce many of our content projects as low, medium, and high tech presentations. So if you go onto the Eyewitness website, you can, if you've got the bandwidth and you've got the technology, interact with a Holocaust survivor, but you can also download a printable version of that content and print it out. And the same applies to everything. Our VR projects are also all rendered in 2D, so that they can be viewed, on flat screens if you don't have the device. So that's just one of the ways in which we go about thinking about access.
Thank you very much. Paul has his hand up, so go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so in addition to Stephen's approach to this, which is that you have, let's say, technology neutral solutions, which I think is the key and that we also follow. I think there's also a question or a challenge here of the actual access to the information itself. So I think from a technology side, in some sense, I see it as a solved problem. But if you then start to talk with the owners of the sources, it turns out that there are actually real obstacles there with respect to, for instance, ownership of the material. Can it be made publicly available and so on? Or is the material even digitized at all? So inclusion is really a massive challenge that we have to respond to, but we have to respond collectively across, again, the different borders of the relevant domains, and not only see it as a technical problem. It's also really a content and a source problem that we stumble into every time we plan these projects.
Thank you very much. And Clarissa, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, I'd also like to point out that, at least in our case, and I'm sure many of my colleagues will agree, we're trying to pioneer and understand these ethical, practical, and other questions in the making of the work, and especially with headset-based VR, which presents challenges for wearers of spectacle lenses, individuals, neurological states in some instances, where we know that the commercial sector is going into these spaces and creating educational materials in different realms for academics and the education sector. And so if we aren't in these spaces pioneering early on, we're ceding territory, approaches, and even the very language that shapes what we do to those who are pursuing different sorts of objectives. With regard to the archival materials we're using, those that are held by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, as well as UConn's archives and special collections, they're all fully accessible online as flat two-dimensional digital surrogates. But will virtual reality potentially open a way to restore, in a digital sense, three-dimensionality to these primary sources? So we're thinking not only of access today, but how that access will be created in the future. And one of the things our project is doing is using open source software, Unity, and that we will be releasing as open source, freely available plugins, what we learn about connecting existing institutional digitized collections into 3D worlds on similar platforms. So it's also about growing access for the future.